There are only two things that confuse me infinitely. Why these are called jazz hands when they're really show tunes hands, and how to really get better at guitar. Why you get stuck, why everybody plateaus around the same time. It's usually some kind of intermediate thing. I remember the best I've ever improved at guitar was like those first few months of playing. I was getting like double as good every single day just by practicing. But then I was the same level for like 10 years. So I have 4 tips, 4 different things that I've noticed myself really kind of break through a plateau. This has happened 4 distinct times in my life, and I'm going to share this with you. Hopefully trying some of these out is going to help you. Number 1 is playing full songs. I think a lot of us do this thing where we learn like a riff, and it's like, all right, I'm just gonna practice my collection of 10 riffs. And that's what practicing becomes. It's like the same 10 Led Zeppelin riffs or Stairway to Heaven, the intro only, but you never actually practice the full songs. And I remember very vividly why I was so against it, because it's like, all right, you've got a riff, and then maybe you just have simple chords they kind of carry the rest of the song. And I was like, well, I know these chords. Why do I have to practice these? Like, I know how it goes. But how naive I was when I started actually gigging professionally. I started doing these shows that were like 3-4 hour long bar or restaurant gigs. And you have to know a ton of songs to do that. So I distinctly remember the first few times that I did it, I had like a set list of 20 songs, which seemed insane to me. Like 20 full songs beginning to end that I would do as a set list over and over again. And it was really difficult for me at first to just memorize those and try to get off a sheet, because I always thought it looked kind of unprofessional being like glued to a chord sheet or something the entire time you do a gig. But there's so much to be learned from going through an entire song from beginning to end, right? Again, even something super simple, like I just taught on my Patreon that new Post Malone song, which is really, the whole thing is just like F, C, A minor, G, right? F, C, A minor, G. And the thing about like a lot of these kind of pop gigs where people want to hear popular songs is like it'll just be the same chord progression over and over and over again. But once you start thinking of the structure of it and how to play the same chord progression in different ways, I think that's when you actually will break through a plateau and become a much, much better player. Right? Let's just take that same chord progression, right? So if I've got an F to C, A minor, G, right? And then I want to go to a verse. It's like even just using the same chord progressions, there's so much that you could do with your strumming hand to maybe palm mute it, to really break that chord down into bands and maybe get like the low part, the high part. Maybe do like different kind of strumming patterns to kind of keep it up while keeping the groove. I think specifically that's like a huge thing on acoustic guitar. But like I said, really helped me understand how to take one chord progression, one 4-chord chord progression, and make it sound different, interesting, and engaging over the course of 3 minutes, all while thinking of where the lyrics are, not getting lost in the song, being like, all right, this is the verse, I know this happens 2 times, or maybe the intro happens once, and the intro I'll have this like little riff into the chord, and maybe it's like, all right, that next time around, instead of going to open A minor, I want to try A minor 11, I want to get there somehow, so I'll go F, C, A minor, G, now A minor 11, F, C, A minor, G. And then maybe like after that, I'll like do a riff to get back to an F chord from like a G major scale or something like that, right? The long story short, however you do it, think of creative ways to make that chord progression sound different and interesting, and that's when you actually acquire a voice on a guitar, in my opinion, right? And it's like how would I do this? It might be different than how somebody else naturally does it, but it all starts with just the same basic chords that so many songs consist of, right? So that's just one kind of thing that I noticed that I really got a lot better once I started trying to kind of get better at transitioning and playing the same chord progression in different ways in like a pop music context, right? Another time that I feel like I really improved a lot in a short amount of time was by totally switching up the way I practice. If you're just practicing the same thing all the time, you're probably not going to see a lot of improvement. You probably are improving at like a smaller rate, but once you drastically switch it up, I think you're going to notice a much better, more effective, jump in your playing. I remember I did this a few years ago when I really wanted to take a month and try to shred, and I totally changed my practice. Most of my practicing is like from a singer-songwriter standpoint, when I just kind of like maybe run through my songs or other songs, kind of like I just showcased. But I wanted to try to do this like at least an hour a day for 30 days and just do like a 3-note per string type deal where I would just actually practice to a metronome and go up and down scales, which is something I'd never really did in a meaningful way. And opening myself up to an entirely different method of practice is something that increased really quickly. I'll link you to that video because I sucked at I still kind of suck at shredding, but I'm so much better, and I visualize the fretboard so much differently because I had that experience, just kind of doing something totally outside of my comfort zone and really just forcing myself to do it, even though I naturally kind of sucked at it at the beginning, right? So 3 notes a string, and again, just what that means is like, I started playing the major scale, like if I do a G major scale shape, it'd be like this. Middle pinky, index, ring, pinky, index, ring, pinky, middle pinky, index, middle pinky. And that's how I would kind of practice the major scale, right? But then if you do it 3 notes a string, every single string has 3 notes. So now it's 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7. 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. And then thinking about that totally differently really helped me kind of get that shape under my fingertips, and knowing both ways really, just kind of got my playing better in a way that I could incorporate into new songs and then take that and add it to the first thing. Speaking of new songs, I've got some new stuff coming out, and this is going to bring us to the sponsor of today's video, DistroKid. The way that I put my music online is through DistroKid. It is a super, super inexpensive service that allows you to just upload an audio file and some artwork, and then they put it and push it out to all the different services. They'll put it on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all the other niche stuff. And then you don't have to worry about like tracking like the numbers or anything. They'll actually keep track of how many streams it gets, and then they'll have a bank that puts money in, and then you can kind of take the royalties out. I was not a huge believer in putting my music online for the longest time, but then recently I had a single I did with a friend of mine become a viral TikTok sound, and it ended up making like thousands of dollars. Had nothing to do with YouTube. It was just totally random. I think if you guys are interested in how that happened, leave a comment because it's kind of wild. It got like 65 million spins or whatever. And I literally would not have known that this happened if not for DistroKid reporting it and finding that money and then actually kind of bringing it back to the right thing. So if you haven't signed up, please use my affiliate link in the description to do it. And it's something that you just kind of have if you're a musician in the modern age. Got to get your music up there or else no one's going to hear it anyway. So make sure you do that. And on to the third thing that really helped me become a much better guitar player and break through that plateau. It was trying a new genre out that I've never ever tried before. I remember the first time I tried learning a bossa nova song, legitimately. It was the song Waters of March. I actually did it because it was a response for someone to ask me how to play it. Had no idea what it sounded like, so I looked it up and I was like, oh, this sounds super cool. And even just like the first... It's like the first part of that song just instantly hooks you, right? It's this cool chord I've never even seen before. So I was like, all right, I'm going to learn this and then I'm going to teach it, right? I wanted to, there weren't really any good lessons on the internet at that time on how to play the song. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to figure it out myself and do it. And I feel like I did a respectable job on it, but just like the 2 days that it took me to learn and teach and edit that video, I learned so much about an entire genre I really was a total noob rookie about. Just the different amount of chord voicings and stuff that you need to really play a song like that, or like most kind of Joe Beam inspired bossa nova songs and like progressions and stuff, instantly made me a better guitar player in 2 days. It just opened up my entire mind to kind of just like playing chords in a different way and kind of even just like playing that like root and fifth thing like within a chord. was something I'd never really considered. And having that in like a practical songwriter way to copy and emulate, it was just something that like I still think about to this day. And I don't even know if I ever would have broached that without the help of that entire genre and just kind of going in super cold as a total beginner mindset, and then just learning from like the master Joe Beam, just incredible songwriter, player, etc. The fourth thing that helped me break through a guitar plateau that I didn't even think was going to help me with guitar at the time was really kind of learning the nuances of another instrument. I remember there was a time when I was like, I really want to become a decent drummer because it's always so hard to like rely on drummers in general. I'm like, I want to do this myself. So I took a lot of time to practice. I remember I could not get double strokes down. It took me forever to learn how to do a double stroke where you kind of just like hit it looks like one stick hit, but then you kind of like catch the rebound, so it kind of gets two quick hits. And then doing that back and forth to create this like always going motor of rhythm that's always like never stops is something that I unexpectedly was able to incorporate into my acoustic guitar rhythm, which has helped me immensely over the years, right? So there are so many nuances that every instrument has with how you play it, right? Like with drums, it's kind of like that steady pulse that always locks you in. It's you kind of get the same idea from practicing to like a drum track or a metronome or something like that, but nothing beats really being able to kind of think of a drummer's mindset and how they're ghosting notes. Basically, what ghosting is on a drum kit is like if you were to verbalize what you were hearing with a drum groove, it might be like a hat, 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 kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. And maybe if you were to try to like emulate that on an acoustic guitar, you'd get that, right? Kick, snare, kick, snare. But there's so much space there where when you start kind of like ghosting or insinuating notes on a drum kit, you'll notice that there's always some kind of movement going on. Even if you can't like really hear it, you feel it more than you hear it, or you hear it at a really soft dynamic. And that is something that I eventually incorporated into my acoustic guitar playing, right? Because it's always like, even if it's something like, my right hand, even if it's not, dynamically going way up and down, I really worked on tightening that stroke up. And that improved my rhythm so much because it's hard to fall out of rhythm when I'm always just kind of keeping that pulse and not deviating from it. Even if I'm only hearing the hits, like behind the scenes, there's always that kind of action. And that's why, you'll never really see me play like this, really. I'm kind of keeping my hand close to the bridge because even if you can't hear it, I'm just kind of getting that groove in and just like feeling it. And the same is to be true with any other instrument. Like when I, really kind of started focusing on piano a lot, my chord building got a lot better, right? Seeing a linear display of how chords are built, like, a C, E, G, B, it's really just the 1, 3, 5, 7 of a major scale stacked in thirds. Seeing the visualization of that in a linear way is something that like made me be like, so that's the same as going 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, on and on throughout like spelling a chord from like a fretboard way, right? So again, whether any of those help you out, like I promise you that some of those will help you out. My own personal journey kind of like had different, levels of each of those 4 different things kind of happen at different times. But I do distinctly remember that at the beginning of each one of those kind of forays into something else, I regained a little bit of that beginner mindset because again, that beginner period is something that you can really notice yourself getting better very, very quickly. And then once you do graduate to intermediate, some people stay there their whole lives and they feel like they're not getting any better. So again, practice full songs. I've got a ton of full songs on my Patreon if you want to learn from me. Otherwise, just learn. There's a million song tutorials on the internet, or just go to Ultimate Guitar and look up like the chord chart or something like that. Play along with the track because that's essentially just playing to a backing track, right? And then make it through the entire song, the whole song. Don't quit after the riff. Do the entire song maybe try to totally switch up how you practice, whether, you know, if you practice with chords and stuff, or like you're practicing your scales all the time, start doing something with chords, vice versa. Pick a different genre. Try a jazz song, try a bossa nova song, try a metal song, and then last but not least, maybe pick up a different instrument, because every instrument has something unique to provide that will help you with any other instruments you decide to pick up. So thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. Like I said, click that link if you want to save some money off your DistroKid membership and help the channel out. At the same time, if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, or the website. I'll talk to you soon.